If you've ever asked yourself, why me? How did I end up here? Would things have been different if I had made different choices, had a different job, hung out with different people? It's a complicated question and one that almost everyone asks, especially if you feel like you've got it together in all the other areas of your life. But addiction doesn't happen because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. It happens below the surface, internally. And the world hands you alcohol as the solution. This episode is about the why, because it's not just about the alcohol. It's about what drove you to seek relief in the bottle. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where we talk about life after alcohol and how to build your unlimited life. And today we're digging into one of the most common and most misunderstood questions in recovery. Why am I an alcoholic? Or maybe for you, it sounds like, how did this happen? What's wrong with me? Could I have avoided this? These aren't just casual questions. They're heavy. They're loaded with shame, self-doubt, and that sinking feeling that you somehow missed a step that everyone else got right. And what makes it even harder is you're actually doing great in most areas of your life. You've done the career, the family, the adulting. You've held it all together. So this thing with alcohol, it doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. And that's what makes it so confusing. Here's what I want you to know. There isn't one reason people become alcoholics. There isn't one cause. And there's definitely not one type of person this happens to. What I've seen in myself, in my clients, and in every story I've ever heard is that addiction happens when a few powerful forces collide. It's like the perfect storm. It's not just your genes, it's not just your childhood, and it's not just the stress of daily life. It's a combination. And there are a lot of theories out there trying to explain it. There's the incentive sensitization theory that says addiction comes from an overly sensitive reward system that makes substances intensely wanted. There's the dopamine imbalance theory, where your brain's chemical regulation is out of whack. And there are psychological theories that say addiction is a coping strategy for trauma, emptiness, or stress. And honestly, I think they're all right. They're just coming at the same problem from different angles. Kind of like recovery programs. They all use different language, different marketing, and try to make you think they're doing something revolutionary. But at the end of the day, they're all just saying the same shit, just in different words. But the model I lean on most, the one that actually makes sense and gives you something you can work with, is the biopsychosocial model. It gives you a complete picture of why this happens. And it's also the reason recovery feels hard, because you're usually trying to treat just one piece of the puzzle when really there are multiple pieces that fit together. You're untangling something with layers, but most people are only working on one layer. So let's start with the obvious question that comes up first for most of us. Is it genetic? My dad was an alcoholic. My grandpa was, my sister, it runs in my family. So is this just in my blood? Then the other big one is it's probably because of my trauma. Bad childhood, toxic relationships, emotional pain. Something happened to me, so this is just how I turned out. And then we have the shame spiral. I just don't have enough willpower. Everyone else can drink normally. Why can't I? These are the top 3 stories I hear over and over again. They're simple, they feel believable, and they give us something to blame, whether it's our DNA, our past, or ourselves. But here's the problem with that kind of thinking. When you say, it's just my genetics, you're basically saying you were doomed from the start, like before you ever picked up your first drink. When you say, it's because of my trauma, you're assuming there's some perfect version of your life where this wouldn't have happened, which might sound comforting, but it's also a fantasy. And when you say, I just have no self-control, you're turning addiction into a personal failure, when in reality, it's a human reaction to pain, stress, wiring, and reinforcement. Those stories are too simple. They reduce addiction down to one thing. And when you reduce it to one thing, it makes you feel like you either have it or you don't, you're broken or you're not, or you'll make it or you won't. That's not helpful or healing, and it's definitely not the truth. So let's stop trying to shrink this experience down to a single sentence, because addiction isn't that clean, and neither is recovery. And now that we've cleaned up some myths, let's get into what's actually going on. I want to show you this model that respects your experience, honors your story, and actually helps you understand what the hell happened. It's used in medicine, psychology, and recovery, and it's the one that made everything finally make sense to me. It's called the biopsychosocial model, and it tells you that addiction isn't caused by one thing. It's the result of a few major forces coming together: biological, psychological, and social. So let's break this down. Bio is your biology, your body, your brain, your genetics. Psycho is your psychology, your personality, your mental health, your emotional life. And social is your environment, your family, your community, your culture. It's not one of these things. It's the combination of these things, the way they interact and stack up on top of each other. That's what creates the conditions for addiction. And here's why this matters so much. Because if addiction has multiple causes, then recovery needs multiple solutions. That's the part most people miss. Most people only address the behavior. They focus on just not drinking. It's the number one trap I see. They think if they can just stay away from alcohol, everything will get better. But the truth is, alcohol was never the real problem. It was the solution to the problem. And then you wonder why you keep slipping, why you still feel anxious, why you still feel like something's off even when you're not drinking. Because nothing changes if nothing changes. If you just put down the drink, but don't change anything else, you're still living a drinking life, just without drinking. You still have the same thoughts, the same patterns, the same emotional habits that drove you to drink in the first place. And that's why people relapse, because they never get to the core. And the core isn't the behavior. The act of drinking is not the core of alcoholism. That's why this model is so powerful, because it shows you what's actually driving the behavior. Let's be real. When you're in recovery or just doing the work of rebuilding your life, home becomes sacred. It's your safe zone. It's where you unplug, regulate, and reset. And for me, one of the little luxuries that makes a huge difference in how I feel is Cozy Earth. I've been sleeping in their sheets for about a year, and I'm telling you, there is no going back. They're breathable and soft, and honestly, they just feel like peace when I crawl in my bed. Whether I'm coming off a stressful day or just need to feel a little more grounded, sliding into these sheets is a reset in itself. They also sent me their bubble cuddle blanket. And listen, this thing is lush. It's faux fur, textured, cozy but stylish, and it lives permanently on my couch now, or wherever I am. It's the blanket version of leave me alone, I'm healing. And here's the truth. When you're doing big emotional work, you need your home to feel like it's on your side. And Cozy Earth helps you build that comfort, quality, calm, all in the everyday details. If you're going to upgrade one thing in your space, let it be this. Go to cozyearth.com and use code Angela for up to 40% off right now. That's cozyearth.com, code Angela for up to 40% off. Trust me, you deserve to feel this good. Let's start with the bio piece of the model: biology, brain, and body. One of the most common things I hear is it runs in my family. And you're right, addiction absolutely has a genetic component. We know from research that several genes have been linked to an increased vulnerability to alcohol dependence. Some of those are ADH1B, ALDH2, GABA2, KLB. I'm not going to bore you to tears with all the sciencey stuff, but yes, biology is a part of it. But here's the catch. Genetics are not destiny here. Just because you carry certain genes doesn't mean you will absolutely become an alcoholic. It means you're more vulnerable to developing a problem if other factors are also present. And that vulnerability can show up in different ways for different people. This is why you'll see families where some siblings have substance issues and some don't. The ones that don't probably just have it manifest differently in some behaviors or something else. For me, it manifested as alcohol and about a million other things, honestly. For someone else, it might show up as anxiety, obsessive behaviors, workaholism, disordered eating, gambling, compulsive exercise, even toxic relationships. Think of anything unbalanced and compulsive. That's how this stuff shows up. It's not always about substance. It's about the drive underneath it. And then, of course, there's your brain, specifically how alcohol interacts with your brain's reward system. When you drink, alcohol triggers a flood of dopamine, the feel-good chemical. It tells your brain, this is relief, this is pleasure, let's do it again. Over time, your brain adapts to that. It learns that alcohol is the fastest path to feeling better. So even if you logically know it's causing harm, your brain is wired to chase that dopamine hit. Eventually, alcohol stops being about fun and it becomes about functioning, about getting through the day, quieting your thoughts, feeling normal. And that's where the switch flips. At first, drinking feels like a choice. Later, it's more like compulsion. That's how the brain works when you've trained it over and over to use one tool for relief. And for me, that showed up quickly, right? I was anxious and insecure about everything, and alcohol felt like magic. It made me feel calm and relaxed and strong. But that magic came with a price because it became the only way I knew how to feel better. And if I didn't have it, I didn't know how to cope. Here's the bottom line when it comes to the biology piece. Yes, your brain and body play a role. Yes, you may be more sensitive to reward, more prone to compulsive patterns, more wired for escape, but that doesn't mean you're destined to be an alcoholic. Biology is just one piece of the puzzle. And listen, if you're in the super early stages and need a good tool to help you get some relief without drinking, download my daily plan. It's my free tool that gives you quick and easy actions you can take throughout the day to help you stay focused and consistent and on track. Because discipline doesn't just happen. You have to build it. And this is where you start. You can get it at addictionunlimited.com/plan. And I will put that link in the show notes for you too. Now, let's talk about the psycho part of the model, your personality, mental health, and emotional wiring. This is the part no one wants to deal with because it's not as straightforward as biology. It's murky, emotional, and personal, but it's also where most of the work needs to happen. For most of us, alcohol didn't just feel good. It solved something. It made us less anxious, more social, less self-conscious, more confident, more calm. It softened the intensity of being in our own minds. And that's the key, because for many people, especially high functioning, high achieving people, the inside never matched the outside. You looked like you had it all together, but internally you're spinning, overthinking, criticizing yourself, trying to control everything, feeling like no matter what you do, it's not enough. So let's be honest, alcohol worked. It was the easiest, fastest way to not feel all of that. And that's what we call self-medication, not in a clinical sense, but in a very real, very human sense. It's using something external to manage what feels unmanageable internally. Let me give you a few examples of what shows up in this psychological layer. Perfectionism, needing everything to be just right and falling apart when it's not just right. Anxiety, constant worry, fear of failure, social discomfort, restlessness, sensitivity, emotional overwhelm, deep empathy, taking on everyone else's energy. Impulsivity, struggling with moderation, chasing intensity, needing stimulation. Emotional repression, right? Being fine on the outside while stuffing everything down on the inside. You may not have named these traits before, but I guarantee you've felt them. Maybe you've used alcohol to take the edge off before a social event, or to silence your brain when it just wouldn't shut up, or to deal with the pressure of being the one who always has it together. Whatever it was, it worked until it didn't. Because alcohol doesn't actually fix anything. It just puts your emotions on mute, and eventually it breaks the volume knob. That's why people feel worse after they stop drinking, because the thing that was masking the anxiety is gone. The thing that was numbing the perfectionism is gone. The thing that was helping you feel normal is gone. Now the feelings are loud again, and you don't have any other tools yet. This is where emotional mastery comes in, not just sobriety, emotional sobriety. You have to learn how to feel the feeling without letting it run the show. You have to get honest about what you've been avoiding and start building the capacity to face it. Otherwise, the cycle repeats. Maybe not with alcohol, but with food or work, control, relationships, anything to avoid sitting in the discomfort of your own experience. So when we talk about the psycho layer, we're talking about the work that actually keeps you sober. And I would be irresponsible if I didn't talk about trauma here. Whether you use that word or not, this is about the emotional pain you've carried that never got processed. And I'm not just talking about major events, abuse, violence, neglect. Yes, those are trauma. But so are a lot of things we go through in everyday life that affect us deeply. Things like divorce, whether it's your own or your parents', car accidents, chronic illness, financial collapse, natural disasters, sudden loss of someone close to you, feeling invisible in your own family. These are all trauma too, because they're unresolved, because your system didn't know what to do with the pain and no one taught you how to move through it. So it got buried, it hardened, and it came out sideways. That stuff doesn't disappear. It lives in your nervous system. And when you don't have the tools to deal with it, your brain goes looking for relief. So even if you don't relate to the word trauma, chances are you've lived through things that left a mark. And when those emotions go unaddressed, they become the fuel behind the behavior. That's when your brain starts looking for a way out and alcohol becomes the easiest exit. That's how trauma shows up in addiction. Not always with a headline-worthy story, but in the way your brain learned to escape instead of regulate. Then there's anxiety, which is the second biggest emotional driver I see. And honestly, it's often just unprocessed trauma in disguise. But most people don't even recognize their anxiety because it shows up in so many different forms. Overthinking, social anxiety, control issues, phobias, OCD patterns, chronic people pleasing, panic, constant busyness, avoidance or procrastination, perfectionism, health obsessions, emotional shutdown. These are all part of the anxiety umbrella. And the truth is, any emotion you can't regulate or manage will eventually manifest as some form of anxiety or some kind of dysfunction. I have to be mindful of agoraphobia, which is a fear of leaving your house, because I've had times in my life when I wasn't in a great mental place and I'll isolate to a point that I start to get weird about leaving the house, like genuinely fearful to go out into the world. And I got to check myself quick and get my shit together because that is a slippery slope. So, what do you do when you feel that emotional chaos? You find the fastest way to make it stop, and that was alcohol. It quieted your brain, it softened the emotion, it gave you something to do when you didn't know what else to do. Again, what we call self-medication. Not because you're trying to treat something consciously, but because your brain was trying to survive. And alcohol is the fastest, most reliable escape there is. But here's the problem. Alcohol doesn't actually fix anything. It just puts your emotions on mute. It's like if you go to the dentist and the dentist numbs you but doesn't do any work. You're not going to feel it, but you're still leaving with the bad tooth. And when the numbing wears off, the pain is front and center. So when you stop drinking, the feelings don't just go away, they rush back in. And if you haven't built emotional regulation tools, the urge to drink gets stronger, not weaker. That's why people relapse, not because they lack willpower, but because they're trying to navigate life without the thing they used to regulate themselves. And that's what recovery has to address, not just stopping drinking, but learning how to feel and function without needing to escape. This is where real recovery begins, not just putting down the drink, but picking up the emotional tools that keep you grounded, clear, and in control. And once again, this is only part of the picture. So let's talk about the social layer of addiction, the external forces that shaped your relationship with alcohol before you even realized it. This is another part that most people overlook because you don't live in a vacuum. You live in a culture, a family, a friend group, a world that in a million subtle and not so subtle ways tells you that alcohol is normal and fun and harmless and the answer to everything. So let's start with the family systems. If you grew up in a house where alcohol was a part of the culture, even if it wasn't chaotic or abusive, you absorbed the message that this is what adults do. This is how people unwind. This is normal. Even if you knew there was dysfunction, you didn't know anything different. You were being trained emotionally and socially to accept alcohol as a part of life. Then you get older and the world doubles down. College, drinking's part of the identity. You're not just a student, you're a partier. You bond over binging. Work culture, happy hours, office parties, alcohol is currency. It's connection. It's how we celebrate and unwind. Parenting culture, you're stressed, overwhelmed, and exhausted, and the solution is mommy needs wine. It's become a punchline. For me, it showed up in the service industry. I worked in bars, and alcohol wasn't just everywhere. It was literally a part of my job. And this was a huge shift for me because all of a sudden I was surrounded by people who drank every day, and I had never seen that before. It wasn't just offered, it was expected. Then it wasn't just my social life, it was my professional life too. And I didn't start drinking really hardly at all until I started working in bars. But here's what I know now. If it wasn't bars, it would have just been something else, right? Because the need was already inside me. The world just handed me the most accessible solution. That's how this works. You're already looking for a way to cope, and alcohol is always there, ready to fill that gap. Think about it. Alcohol is at weddings and funerals, right? It's on vacation and after work. It's how you grieve, how you celebrate, how you connect with others. It's marketed as relaxation, confidence, fun, relief, reward. It's everywhere. And it's accepted, encouraged, and glamorized. No wonder you drank. No wonder it became your go-to. No wonder it got out of hand. Because it wasn't just your stress. It wasn't just your brain. It wasn't just your emotions. It's also the world around you, reinforcing the message over and over that alcohol is the answer, even when it's the thing silently destroying you. Now you can see why the biopsychosocial model matters so much, because addiction isn't just one thing, it's a web. But the more you understand the web, the easier it is to untangle. So here's what I want you to walk away with. Addiction is not a single problem. It's not just your brain. It's not just your past. And it's definitely not just your choices. It's a web woven from biology, psychology, and the world around you. And once that web is in place, it gets reinforced over and over until it becomes your normal. And because addiction is multidimensional, that means recovery is too. You don't have to fix everything overnight. You don't need to untangle the whole knot at once. You just need to start pulling one thread. Maybe that's learning to regulate your anxiety. Maybe it's building healthy structure into your day. Maybe it's finally getting honest about some of your unhealthy coping patterns and starting to work on them. When you understand the full picture, you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start asking, where do I begin? That's what this podcast and this movement is all about. Not just quitting drinking, but rebuilding what made you drink in the first place, with tools, with ownership, with emotional strength. Because freedom isn't just the absence of alcohol, it's the absence of chaos. And now that you've seen the full picture, the biopsychosocial model, I want you to take a minute and really reflect, like which piece speaks the loudest in your life right now? Is it the biology, your brain chemistry, your sensitivity, the way alcohol flipped the switch and never turned it off? Is it the psychological, the trauma, anxiety, overthinking, the emotional patterns you've never learned how to manage? Or is it the social, the world you live in, the drinking culture you were surrounded by, the habits that felt normal because everyone around you was doing it? This matters because long-term sobriety and actual peace requires that you address all of these areas. Not all at once, not perfectly, but over time with intention. Because staying sober isn't about white knuckling through life forever. It's about feeling good in your life, confident, clear, connected. And you can't feel good if you're constantly triggered by anxiety, drowning in emotions you can't regulate, or isolating in patterns that keep reinforcing the same cycles. So where do you start? You start with what hits daily. You start by managing the anxiety and emotional discomfort that trips you up in real time. You start by learning how to stay present when stress hits. You build tools that help you move through discomfort instead of running from it. You get around people who understand you so you don't have to do it alone. Because if you can't get through a regular day comfortably, you're not ready to dive into deeper trauma work or bigger emotional layers. And I say that with love and experience. I didn't do trauma work until I was 13 years sober. Not because I didn't know I had trauma. I knew I had a ton, but I didn't realize how much it was affecting me until I had done a lot of emotional work. Then I had the ability to actually see it clearly and start exploring it without unraveling. And in those first 13 years, I had plenty of other shit to work on. I promise you, my character, my patterns, my emotional maturity, my relationships, my integrity, that was the foundation. And that's what gave me the strength to eventually go deeper. So don't be in a hurry, be committed to consistent growth, to personal development, to modifying the behaviors that keep pulling you off track. Because that's what builds true emotional sobriety and a life you actually want to stay sober for. If you're ready to start managing those daily stressors and emotional patterns, go grab my Recovery Starter Kit. It's a self-paced online course designed to help you build that foundation of a recovery lifestyle. It's real tools for handling cravings, managing emotions, setting structure, and creating momentum that can last. I just upgraded the whole course, so it's super inexpensive right now with an introductory price, and it gives you a step-by-step blueprint to build your sober life. You can get that at addictionunlimited.com/kit. But if you're feeling scattered or struggling to make it one day to the next, go get my daily plan that I was talking about earlier. It's free. It's how we start building discipline without burnout, right? And if you've tried everything and you're exhausted and you're finally ready to get real effing serious, you can always book a call with me and see if we're fit to work together. It doesn't matter if you're 5 days sober or 15 years. I'm here and we can start immediately. That link is always in the show notes, addictionunlimited.com/call. I will put all those links in the show notes. So listen, you didn't end up here by accident. You ended up here because you were trying to cope in a world that never taught you how. But now you're learning, you're building, you're choosing something different. And that's what we do here. We don't settle, we don't shrink, we live one step at a time. Thank you so much for listening to Addiction Unlimited today, and welcome to the Unlimited Life. This is where sobriety meets purpose, power, and freedom. I love you guys. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.